to moderate this session, and the theme for this session is Excellence to Impact, showcasing excellence in HR leadership, innovation, transformation, and impact. And it's going to be a very practical session because we'll be hearing from thought leaders on their experiences so far. So I'll start with Mrs. Ayodeji, who is the HR director for Guinness. My first question will be, and speaking from your experience, what does impact mean to you in the context of HR leadership, and how do you drive it in your organization?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, again. So impact for me is multifaceted. So I'm glad you've restricted it to in the context of the HR profession. So like I said, HR has been on a long journey. And different countries and different organizations are different stages of the growth and the maturity of HR. So when I think about impact in its truest sense, for me, it is positioning ourselves as business leaders first and HR leaders second. Because you have to speak the language of the business to be relevant or to be seen as relevant to the business. There's no doubt that HR is critical in any organization. But the dilemma is that many times it's not considered so. So what helps to increase impact is to what extent we're able to speak the language of the organization. So we can't be speaking Greek and the organization is speaking Latin. We cannot have HR priorities that do not align with the business priorities. And when I mean alignment, it's not just, I'm not talking about blindly agreeing with anything that is business priority, but keying it in and making sure that is instrumental in supporting the objectives of the business. So something I always, that comes to mind for me is that operational excellence, being able to hire on time, have accurate contracts and all the admin operational stuff we do, will get you or may get you a seat at the table. But it is strategic impact that will keep you at that table. So in other words, we need to ask ourselves, to what extent do we understand the business? For me, it's a personal joy when I see HR leaders that transition into the core business, leadership positions in the core business. Because for me, I believe that they have, passed the exam around being a business leader first and a HR leader second. So when I think about impact, it is one, aligning business priorities or HR priorities to business priorities so that we're growing in the same direction. It is using analytics, insights, and data to inform our decisions. Depending on, who you ask, CEOs, some companies will tell you that HR sometimes tends to be emotional. So you don't want to approach the business with a position or a recommendation, especially when it involves money and it's not backed by any kind of insights at all. And I'll give you a very practical example. You could be at lunch one day with colleagues, friends in other organizations, and one of them will talk about how they have a crush in their organization. And then you gallantly, go to your management and you say, oh, well, I think we should have a crush. Okay, apart from the fact that it's a nice thing to have, and it is a good thing to have, what is the data behind it, right? What percentage of your workforce are in the, childbearing, child-having, child-nurturing age? In your attrition, how much attrition are you having, for example, right? Out of your attrition numbers, how many of them are female? If it's an organization that conducts exit interviews, how many of those exit interviews did people state as, lack of inadequate childcare or whatever as one of the reasons for them leaving? And then going beyond that, what is the cost of replacing those employees, right? So we all know that if permit me to say so, there's a see-finish factor that when it comes to existing employees versus bringing someone in to do the same job from outside because they're paying current rates for that new intake. Unlike the person has been loyal to you that you have seen finish, quote unquote, right? So what is the cost, or what has been the cost over the preceding year, 2 years, of replacing those employees that have left for family-related reasons. And if you go with that data, it shows, one, you've done your homework, and it shows, two, okay, there's a real cost, right? There's a potential cost to not doing this. So therefore, it gives you a stronger voice at the table. So I think for me, like I said, use of data, use of analytics, so that you are more dispassionate in your decision making. You are able to think with the same objective head that the business speaks to as well. But also leading with empathy. I think no amount of AI, no matter how good you are as a HR operations person or a strategic HR leader, you cannot do without empathy. At the end of the day, you are the people advocates. It's your responsibility as a HR professional to make sure that the people angle to the discussion is always a part of the discussion, is always a part of the decision making, is always a part of the strategy. You are that voice, because business leaders are business people. We want to grow the business, make it profitable. But it's your voice that should be the strongest in saying, what is the people dimension to this? And you can't really do that with data alone. You do need to have some empathy, right? And if you think about, especially COVID, moving on from COVID and beyond, where there's been a bigger emphasis on mental health, well-being, peace of mind. I mean, back in the day, it was unheard of to say you're leaving a company to a company that pays less. It's like the math is not mathing, right? But people do that nowadays more and more, because COVID, more than anything, had taught them to appreciate the value of life, or the value of a balanced life, right? So you'd find that when it comes to intent to stay, a big driver of intent to stay is, to what extent does this organization care about me as a human being who has a life outside the office, who sees me as a holistic human being, other than, or do they just see me as a machine that is able to perform, right, and drive numbers? So you'd find that where you have a high empathy organization, then that reduces attrition numbers significantly, right? And therefore reduces the cost of running business, because you are spending less money on hiring and what have you. So I'll just end it there, because I know we're pressed for time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ayodeji. And I like the angle that you've taken us. So for HR professionals, we must understand the language of the business. And you said something about data analytics. We must begin to use analytics to speak the business language. And this takes me to my next question, to Mr. Shakiru. But before I ask you your question, please, can we give it up for Mr. Shakiru? And I'll tell you why. That's not loud enough. Let's give it up for Mr. Shakiru. Okay, so you can see him surrounded by, on his left, on his right. All right, sir. So my next question to you, coming from the angle Mrs. Ayodeji has talked about data analytics, from your experience, kindly share an example of how you've used data and analytics to inform HR decision-making and drive business impact.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, colleagues in HR professional. I'm happy to be here today, and many thanks to the organizer for putting this event together. Thank you, Janet, for being on my case. Look, this is what we do every day. We leverage data to make decisions for the business. And the decision is all about the existence, the survival, and the excelling of the business. I used to tell my colleagues, when there is no business, then you cannot be talking about people. It is only when the business is existing, is thriving, and has potential to grow, then we begin to talk about people. So it is very important as HR professionals that we leverage on data, but not just ordinary data, not just ordinary reports, but we need to mine data in such a way that we derive the quality that is required for us to make business decisions. Sometimes I ask my people, can I have this data, and then can we mine it in such a way that just looking at it, a dashboard will tell everyone that it is time to make a decision. When you have an analytical result that you are not able to see within 1 minute that it is time to make a decision, then you are not talking about people analytics. No. It has to be very clear, even to a layman, that what you are presenting requires an immediate intervention, and it requires a support from everyone. sometimes when we are talking about people topic, generally, we tend as HR professional to focus it as HR agenda. No, it's not an HR agenda. It is a people agenda and it is a business topic. And everyone must participate. And I will give an example. Whenever you are making a decision beyond analytics, it is very important that you focus on fairness, equity, validity, and the reliability of the decision you are making. Any decision that you make that will not stand the test of time, then there's no need to make that decision. And it is always very important to place your decision on these 4 principles. Sometimes if one of these principles fails, you need to ask yourself, do I need to go ahead again? And this is where your analytical result will show you certain information that you need to work on. And I will give an example because I work for Nestlé. I've been in the organization for 20 years, so I know what the company has been doing when it comes to people and when it comes to making decisions. We have what we call the Nestlé and High. And Ajibola talks about it, about employee experience and engagement. The Nestlé and High is a survey that we roll out globally in our organization. And the kind of information that we derive from the survey tells us feedback, prompt feedback about people. We are able to see what is the engagement level of our people. Where are they engaged? Those on the field, those in the manufacturing setup, are they as engaged as those working in the office? Because sometimes we have so many programs at the head office and everybody is excited about the head office. But the head office is not only the organization. You have some other people that are working on the field. So it is very important to understand their engagement level. But being engaged is totally different from being enabled. Enablement requires you to have the right resources at the right time to deliver your job. So the survey also tells us how enabled our people are. And from time to time, we are able to tell how many people are willing to stay in our organization, talking about retention. So when you have the right data, then you know that, look, 75% of our people are willing to stay. 80%, 90% of our people are willing to stay. So what do we need to do to continue to make those people that are not willing to still stay behind and work for the organization? Also to understand, those that said they are willing to stay, what is it that we are doing as an organization that make them to want to stay in the company? So turning data into decision making is very, very important. And it is not just an HR agenda. It is a business agenda. When we are talking about succession plan, talent management, performance management, it is very important that when you want to change your performance management tool or your talent management tool, or you want to change the criteria for determining who is a talent in your organization, then it is very important to use data because the data will help you to determine what your focus should be, not what you have read in textbook, but how and what will drive the business to success. So it is very important that we continue to work on data, turn data into value that will add to the business. I just want to cite an example. We were actually discussing succession plan. And for some of our key roles, we have what we call the ready now and ready in 1 to 2 years. But it is very important that you are not just looking at the bench of people that will replace that key position immediately. It is likely that you are going to have one or another one in the next 1 to 2 years. But what is it that the data is telling you? What kind of analytics have you done to ensure that even those that will take the mantle of the leadership of the organization in the next 10 years are already being groomed, are already being identified, and are already being supported? This is where the power of data analytics come in, to ensure that even you are delivering the business result today, tomorrow, and even years to come. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Shakiru, for running us through the importance of data analytics. How many of us have heard that saying, in God we trust, in God we trust? HR professionals, in God we trust. Exactly. Every other person, please bring your data. All right, so we'll come back to you, Mrs. Ayodeji. Still on your experience, ma'am. Please give us an example of a HR innovation or transformation. Please, can we have one house? Please give us an example of an HR innovation or transformation initiative that you've led that had a significant impact on the business.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So, organization I used to work for, so if you look at the demographics of that organization, it was highly male denominated, highly unionized, very traditional. And the business realized very quickly that they had to evolve or go extinct, as it were. So I was given the assignment to increase metrics in key areas, right? So broadly, it was inclusion and diversity. So that involved 4 things. Increasing representation of females and ethnic minorities. So because of where the organization was based, there were, majority of the workforce was from that area. It was just easier, to hire people, and they didn't make any efforts to do it differently. So there was a dominance of one tribe, in that organization. Another area to improve on, or I was tasked to improve on, was, apart from female and ethnic minority representation, was disability hiring, which of course is quite new, in Nigeria as a whole for many reasons. Third area of focus was well-being. So, if you think, this was even before COVID, but even at that time, it was imperative on the business to do better around well-being. So it was very performance-based, very driven. So, and we were starting to see the effects of that, as it were. And then also in the last employee survey that was done as to why people were, what would make, so there was a question around what would make you leave the organization. Poor line management came out very strongly. And then that survey was looked at in addition to attrition. So using data again, looking at the data around attrition, and with the exit interviews that were done, line manager capability was a big, thing that came out. Not so much so my line manager is toxic or is, vindictive, but just, look, I could have been managed better. My line manager didn't have the maturity to handle a lot of situations that came up. So basically not knowing how to lead. A lot of people, and, around that time, a lot of people had been promoted into grade levels that made them line managers automatically, but without the organization giving them the skills and abilities needed to be line managers. Yes, they were ready for the next grade, but were they ready to lead people? I think that was where the organization fell short, if I can put it that way. So what was viewed as a good thing, oh yes, we're promoting people, they're moving higher, but we were not giving them the tools to succeed on the line manager standpoint. So basically, we had to, so because that imperative was coming from the business, executive buy-in was not an issue. It was less of an issue, let me just put it that way, in terms of, okay, this is what we need to do to move forward. And one of the things I had to impress on business was say, it's not enough to have this as a, oh yeah, we should do this. But tone at the top is important, so we need to get executive leadership behind this, more strongly in action more than words, but also make it part of their KPIs, right? Because people will do what you reward and not what you say they should do. So it was put as part of their KPIs. There were people given, rewards, being recognized for, really putting their weight behind this as well. So there was positive reinforcement as well. So there was a deliberate drive that went into increasing the number of females in the organization. Like I said, it was very heavily male dominated, right? And deliberately, so basically we would say, look, in a hiring pool, if we're recruiting for a role, you needed to have at least half of the candidates to choose from to be interviewed that are female. Now, because of the sector the organization was in, we had to be very intentional about finding where these females were at, right? It wasn't banking, it wasn't finance and things that were easy. I have more females. You know, it was a sector that had always been male dominated, right? So we realized we had to, should I say, go a level lower? So looking at internships, looking at youth corpers, so basically doing more of the growing of the talents, putting our weight and our funding behind females. You know, when you have women in manufacturing, women in engineering, those kind of bodies, we had to really partner very closely with them to, you know, find candidates. And of course, that had a big impact on the business. So there was impact for each of those 4 things that I called out earlier, but I'll just speak to the female, you know, and ethnic representation in the interest of time. So I would say the impact was, you know, more in multiples, I would say. So of course, there was an increase in revenue, and I'll explain why. So increase in revenue in the sense that because you had a more diverse, should I say, workforce, we were able to be more in tune with the consumer because we had varied perspectives that went into the kind of products we manufactured, right? The kind of products we manufactured, the variants we now had, the way we even went to markets in terms of having adverts that would appeal to a broad range. You know, because we had to, because it took a lot of deep dive, soul searching to realize that even the way our adverts were positioned, right, appealed more to a specific demographic, you know, of the population than the other. So we worked on that, we changed that. Line manager capability, we put a lot of, you know, training and, you know, funding into training, into developing as development as people managers, which led to, of course, closer connections to the teams, you know, better connections, less attrition, which therefore reduced hiring. I'd spoken about that earlier. Now, because there was more diversity, there was, of course, better collaboration across functions, you know, because, hey, what was happening before is, predominantly from one group or one, you know, gender, you know, that changed, and there was better connection, which, of course, helped with decision making. Employer brand and employer value proposition, of course, grew in multiples because we just became more appealing, right? We became more appealing to the external markets, and therefore it was easier to recruit the kind of people we wanted. Now, employee value proposition for me is an interesting thing because you would say, well, you know, Nigeria, 200 million plus population, high youth ratio, people are always looking for work, so we can hire anybody at any time. But of course, we all know that the specific crop of people you want, they have options, right? So it's really the best company in terms of, yes, good paying, but also best in terms of employee experience and what have you, that they generally have their pick of the pack. And of course, we wanted those people as well. And because of the initiatives we had started and went into, it was easier to hire those crop of people, you know, not just anybody. And so I'll just stop there in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're pressed for time, but I would ask you your last question before I come back to you to give your final thoughts. Still Mrs. Ayodeji. Okay, you've spoken about, Mrs. Ayodeji now, you've spoken about HR being a strategic partner, and that will be my last question to you. What would you advise HR leaders who want to move from operational excellence to strategic impact do?
Thank you. So I've spoken about that earlier, but I'll just recap with that. So I talked about moving from operational excellence to strategic leadership, right? Because of where it puts you on the table. I've spoken about the use of data and insight and analytics. It's here to stay, makes your work easier, and it's an easier language for the business to understand. I've talked about understanding the business and the dynamics of the business. You know, because for many of us, it's okay, when it's time to talk about people, then, okay, yes, Mr. or Mrs. HR, what do you have to say? But I believe an impactful HR leader should be able to blend into an executive team. In other words, when you see a team of people talking about a business, it shouldn't be easy for you to distinguish who the HR person is. So whether they're talking about sales and how we go to market, your voice should be there. Whether it talks about revenue and what's causing the revenue growth or drop, your voice should also be there as well. Not just when it comes to, oh yes, people, yes, what do you have to say? You know, so if you're able to play in this, then of course you're more impactful because your voice gets stronger, more vocal, more visible, and people, of course, attach a heavier weight to what it is that you have to say. And then also, something else I hadn't mentioned earlier is being a change leader or a change maker and not just a policy driver. Right? Now, if you do a quiz in a lot of organizations and you say policy, 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 they will typically point to the HR person. So we're approached with a situation or a dilemma, and the first thing we fall back on or fall behind is policy. Right? But to what extent are we driving change in the organization? To what extent are we changing mindsets? Are we the organization to think differently and do differently as a business, not just about people as well? That would also go a long way.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Ayodeji. So, Mr. Shakiru, because we're pressed for time, I'll ask you 2-in-1 questions. How do you balance people-centered decisions with the hard realities of business? And also give us an example of what you've done in that space.
It's a very good question. This happens every day, and that is why we are in business, and that is why we are part of the leadership team. It is very important that every day in discussing business, for every topic, you have the people matter on every topic. And that is why as HR professional in the business, it is very important that you also drive people agenda, so that people also know that, look, when it comes to driving business results, there are people impact. I remember during the COVID era, when it was very difficult and the government declared that no one should go out, travel were banned, but government exceptionally gave the food industry the pass to operate. And we are in the food industry. So it became very difficult even while people are not going out. So how do we move our employees to get to the place of work? How do we house them to work? How do we feed them when they are working? How do we motivate them? How do we ensure that they connect back to their family? And the family also know that they are fine and they are doing very well. And it is not that we have quarantined them because something has happened. A lot happened during this particular period. And it is because for every topic, there are people impact. So when you change the shift pattern, you already immediately have the people impact. How do you move people in the morning? How do you move people in the evening? What about people that are not comfortable to commute with others because of the fear of contacting the virus? It is very important that even this granular as it is, you make the right decision. Now, when you now talk about making bigger business decisions, like you want to locate a plant in an environment where you don't exist. There was a time we made a plan, a business proposal, to have a plant in Abaji. Abaji is about 50 kilometers from Abuja. It's far from where we are located. So we had to make several decisions about how to locate this particular factory in that location in such a way that we'll be able to have the right people to do the job, we'll be able to throw them, we'll be able to make sure that they have the right competency, and also they will be able to internalize the value of Nestlé. Because how we do business is different from how other people do their business. So on a daily basis, whenever there is an opportunity to make business decisions, everyone looks up to us as HR to say, what is it and what are the impacts? About 2 weeks ago, we were having some discussion in the office, and our finance director said, this question you asked, and it was a finance question, he said, but I think Shakiru is the best person to answer it. And I provided the answer to everyone, and it was satisfactory. It was a business question, it was a finance question, and anytime that you are discussing in the boardroom, it is very important that you don't wait until when you get to the agenda, when it is HR, it is succession plan, it is talent conversation, it is performance management. You have to be part of the discussion when you are talking about route to market. Route to market is not how to get from Bagada to Yaba, but how you are able to connect with your consumer that will buy your product and also still repurchase your product and become loyal to your product. And it is very important that you have that, what we call the business insight to make decisions. And in doing that, I will quickly just mention, for us, there are 6 competencies to balance between people and business decision. There are 6 competencies that HR professional must demonstrate, must use, must leverage on every time. You don't have to use one after the other, but you just have to leverage on everything at the same time. The first one is being a business partner, a strategic business partner, someone who understands the business, who understands the tone of the business, who knows what is organic growth, different from real internal growth, different from Moji, different from PFME. When you understand all this, then you will be able to speak the business language. It's also very important that as HR, we are cultural enablers. It is very important that people understand the culture of the organization. But not only that, they should internalize the culture of the organization and live the culture of the organization. Also, it is very important that we provide what we call capability builder. Every organization, for you to be able to deliver your business, you must be able to have that capacity and the capability for the organization to strive and deliver the business. Insight advocates for every activities, for every issues, for every conversation, for every subject, an HR professional must be able to dissect, understand, and see what it is when it comes to people and how will it impact the people. When you do this, then the people, the business will always refer to you and will always even wait to have meetings. There are meetings and several meetings that HR sometimes don't participate. Monthly sales meeting, developmental meetings, WOR, weekly meetings. You just have to participate in all the business meetings. But not just participating and you just being there, but you are making contribution. The business is actually asking you, Mr. Shakiru, what will that mean for us? Are we ready to go as far as going to that particular location? And lastly, I will mention change agents. Any organization that will excel and will continue to strive must constantly go through change. You cannot just stay alone and you think that you are the champion. While you are the champion leading your sector, there are so many people that want to even take part of what we call market shares. So it is very important that HR leaders also understand market shares and how your organization is leading in the market shares and how your organization is contributing. So as change agent, it is very important for HR professional to also make sure that whatever is happening in the organization, the HR professional lead the change, is seen in the front of the change, make the change happen, and ensure that the organization does not just exist for yesterday or today, but for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been power-packed. A round of applause, please. We can do better. All right, so this is the end of the year, and we're gearing into 2026. Mr. Shakiru, what's one word that you'll leave for the HR and career professionals ahead of 2026?
One word. I would say be outstanding. Be outstanding. In every organization, there are 4 types of people in every organization. Those that are laissez-faire, carefree, they don't mind what is happening. They come in and go out. You need to be able to identify them and know how to, you understand what I mean? The second one are people that are reactive, okay? And the business also, make sure that your business is not a reactive business. But as much as possible, you can strive to be proactive. Proactivity means you are ahead of the curve. You are ahead of the change. But being outstanding is just being over there that every other people cannot catch up with. And that's why I go with be outstanding.
Thank you so much, sir. Mrs. Ayodeji, one word for the HR professionals and career professionals.
So two instructions. What do we have? So 2 instructions. Be more business focused. I think I've touched on that in every response I've given. And invest in your personal development. Invest in your personal development. We take care of people all the time. We hardly take care of ourselves professionally. So please invest in your own personal development.
Thank you so much. Please, one more round of applause. We've heard it from our thought leaders. Mr. Shakiru and Mrs. Ayodeji. From Mr. Shakiru, what's the one word you got from him? Be outstanding. And Mrs. Ayodeji? Exactly. Personal development. Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, sir. All right, so moderator, we'll hand over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Please, group photo. We'll call on Mr. Wale Smart Oyeride, the DG NECA, to please come and join them for the award. Dr. Motola as well, please. Pictures. Can please come to the front of the stage, please. Thank you. Pictures for the award, then. General group picture.